Hey VC, Dave here in Texas, and I was trying to position this camera here where it wouldn't show this glare in my glasses, but I can't figure it out, and I don't feel like messing with it too much. It doesn't bother me as long as it doesn't bother you, I'll put it that way. But there was a record sale here in town, 2 or 3 weeks back that I went to, and it was fun. I mean, they're always fun just to go look around and everything. I didn't have, my high hopes as to like find anything particularly rare or anything. I mean, our town here in this part of Texas is, well, I'm sure the people here would like to think that it's very progressive and all that, but for me anyway, it's kind of almost the opposite of that. Don't tell anybody. But at any rate, I kind of figured it was mostly going to be rock and roll, and that type thing. Maybe some, I don't know, maybe some new bands. There was a dealer there that had a big table, and it was almost all sealed new stuff that he was selling. But like I said, most of it was rock and progressive rock and that type thing. They were all, new vinyl pressings and whatnot, and that's not particularly what I was looking for. I mean, I kind of went in and was looking for, if I could find something that interested me that was kind of a bargain. And sure enough, I did really, as I went in on the, the room to begin with. Also met up with a guy that I've met here recently. His name's Ken. Hey Ken, if you're watching this. But he lives here in town, and he's a record dealer. I met him at the record show, I don't know, time before last. He had a little table set up there, and at some point in time I think he kind of wants to have his own record store on his own property or something. I think he lives kind of out in the country somewhere. But Ken's pretty interesting. He's got, he knows a lot about music, and he's got this sort of this spidey senses for, record deals and whatnot. And, he knows a lot about music, and he knows the people here in town. So if you have a question about somebody or, something that you've seen on the net, he kind of knows about it, because I think he was born and raised around here. But we talked for a little bit when I saw him there, and he was really getting ready to go up to Hurst, Texas, where they had a show there about 2 or 3 days later, and he was going to set his table up there because I'm sure he gets better money for his the vinyl that he has, at his tables, or whatever it is that he's selling. I'm sure he makes better money there. But we talked for a little bit, and he said he was probably going to be at the Richardson show. There's a Richardson show coming up, I don't know, in a couple of months, maybe in September, something like that. I'm sure he'll be there at that one as well. But we just talked for a little bit, and as I walked in, I saw a lady and her husband. They had a table right as you walked in, right in front of you, and the sign said CDs $3. And so I was normally attracted to that, and I found some CDs there. And then there was a guy kind of in front of her off to the left that had a bunch of used vinyl for $1. But most of his stuff was in pretty bad shape, really. I mean, like, there was a Chet Atkins vinyl I was kind of interested in, which I'd never seen before, where Chet had played with like some, I don't know, like an Indian or something, and there was some like, sitar and some other unusual instruments on there. And I was real curious about that, but the vinyl was so beat up, even for $1, I found it a little bit questionable. I didn't know if it would, if I played that, if it was going to like damage the needle on my turntable or whatever. So I passed on that. But at any rate, when I went in, I went through the ladies' pile that was there and found most of them were $3 what she had. Some of them were, there was another guy there that had some for $1, but I didn't find many CDs there or you know, any of his, because they were just such odd selection of stuff I never had heard of. But from the ladies that had them for $3, some were $3, some were $5, and then some were like just priced as marked. But, you know, I saw some in there for $7 or something like that. But even at, you know, if you saw something you really, really wanted at $7, then that was a good deal. But I mostly just stuck to the cheaper price stuff. I found enough stuff there to keep me interested. I picked up this one here, which is the Modern Mandolin Quartet Intermezzo. This is like it says, it's just a mandolin quartet. This is on the Windham Hill label, and so, you know, being on the Windham Hill label, I thought, you know, it'd be a pretty easy chance to go with this one. And it is a really good, it's got like a good CD. It came out in 1990 on Windham Hill, and it has 12 selections on it. Like I said, it's a quartet, so there's 4 players, and there's everything on here from Joseph Haydn to Ravel. There's a Leonard Bernstein. There's a Debussy, Shostakovich, a Bach, a Aaron Copland, a Villa-Lobos, and a couple other songs on it. But yeah, it's a real nice CD if you like quartet music, and I like that it's, you know, the mandolin is just unusual instruments to be playing these classical pieces, and it's a real pleasant CD. I also found this at her table. She had some vinyl there as well. This is a Beethoven quartet, string quartet. It's the Janacek Quartet, which I've never really heard of, and you know, the CD or the cover's a little bit beat up here and there, but I like string quartets, and this is Beethoven String Quartet number 8 in E minor, and on the back here it kind of tells a little bit of the patron that commissioned this quartet from Beethoven. He was a Russian, Andreas Romovsky, something like that. Anyway, he was a Russian diplomat and married a prince, and Russian prince, and he commissioned this. He knew a lot about music, and commissioned this from Beethoven. And I'm not. The liner notes, or the back of it, says that they don't know how much input he had in on this, but it's a real pleasant piece of vinyl, and plays really pretty well. I mean, I was a little bit skeptical about it because the condition of it looks a little rough, but it plays okay, and it's on the Westminster label, which really I don't know much about, and a fairly plain cover, but it turned out to be a pretty good find. I found this one, which is, I was going to look at this up before I got on here and forgot about it, but this is John Hassell. It's called John Hassell and Blue Screen. I guess Blue Screen is the name of the band. Dressing for Pleasure. And I've seen on Bandcamp that John Hassell has a new work out, a new CD or whatever. It's sold out over there, but you can buy the downloads. And I listened to it a little bit, and I may eventually get it. It's a little bit of a departure from his other third world music type stuff, and so is this. This came out in 1990, I think. There goes the booklet. I believe this came out in 1990. And let's see here, 1994. And I don't know if this is, it's also a promotional copy. I don't know if this is before or after his collaborations, you know, those Eno albums that he was on. Those are really the ones that I really like listening to. This one here, actually, I found a little bit disappointing for me. It didn't cost me much money, so, you know, that's okay. But he kind of is trying to do something different here. And I'm not real sure if I can describe. It's not, well, there is the very last song on here, which there are, I think, 10 or 12 songs. Yeah, 12 songs, and it's titled Mati, which may be in reference to the guy that did the artwork on one of his albums. There's an artist by that name. His first name is Mati. But with that one, he kind of gets into that, you know, that third world gamelan type music. That last track, he does some of that on here. But the other tracks on here are kind of, well, they depart a lot from that. They're kind of hip hop in a way, or at least that's kind of my, you know, they're kind of synthesizer oriented, a little bit of glitch synthesizer in there, and I think he was just trying to do something experimental, and I was going to try and see where this falls into his you know, discography of albums, but I haven't gone on there yet. I'm kind of thinking 1994 is after he did those third world albums with Eno. I know I've got one of them that I listened to here recently. Hold on a second, I'll go get it. And like these, this is one of them. This one's called Jon Hassell, City Works of Fiction. And this is the one I really like with that artist I was talking about. This is, this one's called Magic Realism, I believe. And then there's AKA Dabari Java. But this one here is the one I really like, and then there's another one on this same type vibe that's on this issue EG editions or whatever. It was kind of done in collaboration with Eno, although Eno doesn't play on either one of these. But these are the ones that I really prefer to hear of Jon Hassell's music. But anyway, you go over to Bandcamp if you want to listen to his new work. I may end up getting it. Here's one I picked up. There were two of them. There's this one and this one by two separate artists. They're on Verve. This one here is by Hank Jones, which I was not familiar with. He's a pianist. Odd cover here. It's odd, but rather dated cover. And Hank Jones is a pianist, and I never had really heard of him, but it was on Verve, and I thought I'd take a little bit of a chance with it because it was so cheap. But they came in this rather unique covers, and I do like the way that they are presented. But one of the things that I immediately heard when I played this, most of it is piano music, but the first couple of cuts, or Vanity is the name of it, and supposedly this came out in, I think it was 1947 or something like that, so it's like early jazz, bebop. But one of the first things I heard about it whenever it was playing is that there was a guitarist on here as well, and you know how they, how some musicians will play in unison or whatever and strike the same notes. Well, I could hear that with him playing his piano, and I looked on here. I didn't know who the guitarist was, and it's Johnny Smith, which is this guy right here who I really like as a guitarist. This is a Johnny Smith featuring Stan Getz, and it's a Moonlight in Vermont. It's a really good album. So Johnny Smith is kind of hard to find, but this is really a nice album if you like guitar music. But anyway, Johnny Smith plays on this Urbanity album as well, and a couple of songs, at least the first two from what I can remember, and then the rest is just kind of piano music. There are a couple covers on here. One is T for Two, and the other is let's see, there's one by Rodgers and Hart, does Blue Rooms by Rodgers and Hart, and then I think one other cover on here, but he does them real well. And the way that there's some liner notes on here as well, which kind of surprised me, by Steve Kuhn. Probably can't see that, but that's the same Steve Kuhn that has recorded for ECM Records, that did the liner notes in here. But at any rate, this turned out to be a really good album, and I was happy I got it. This other one here is the Wynton Kelly Trio, which I'm not really that familiar with, but it has kind of the same packaging. It's called It's All Right, and this is what I guess the original album cover looked like. It says, Wynton Kelly Trio is too much, yeah baby, especially with 5 cats like Wynton, Paul, Jimmy, Kenny, and Candido. But Wynton Kelly, this also Wynton Kelly plays the piano, and there's some other players on here, like Kenny Burrell is also on here, who plays guitar. And now, am I saying that right? Yeah, Wynton Kelly plays piano, Kenny Burrell guitar, Paul Chambers on bass, Jimmy Cobb on drums. And what it is that you know, this came out in, I don't know, I'm guessing the 50s, but for what it is, it's a pretty good, I guess it's a quartet or a quintet, something like that, but it's pretty good music. I like the other one a little bit better, the Urbanity album, but that one's not too bad. I found this one also. This is Kenny Burrell with Art Blakey. Sort of a well, it's a guitar album, but you know, it's kind of bebop jazz of the time. I think this came out, you know, on Blue Note Records. Actually, I found 3 of them. I found that one, this one called Blue Light, or Blue Lights. The cover on here is by Andy Warhol. And of course, they have, some of them have different players on them, and a lot of them are like quintet, quartet. And also found this one. This is Kenny Burrell with Jim Rainey, excuse me, which also is a guitarist. And on the 6th track, which is 11 minutes long, they kind of trade out leads on it. Like Kenny or Burrell will play like one lead, and then Jim Rainey will play, you know, come in right behind him and play another lead, and then Kenny Burrell will come back and play a lead, and they'll kind of trade off back and forth like that, which makes for an interesting song. And they're both real excellent guitarists. So this is kind of a neat album for that reason. It's on the Prestige label, I believe, yeah. But you know, you got Kenny Burrell on it, and Jim Rainey plays guitar, Donald Byrd on trumpet, Jackie McLean on alto sax, Mal Waldron is on piano, Doug Watkins on bass, and Arthur Taylor's on the drums. But real interesting album. This one here was recorded at the Five Spot Cafe, which is located at in Lower Manhattan. I guess it was, I don't know if they're still open or not, but back in the day, you know, it was a happening spot from the way the liner notes read. But it's got Tina Brooks on tenor sax, Kenny Burrell on guitar, Bobby Timmons on piano, and then you got Roland Hanna on piano, Ben Tucker on bass, and Art Blakely plays drums. And these are the ones that are quartet, quintet. Sometimes they'll play quartet, and then from what the liner notes say, they'd, you know, like some of the guys would be replaced and then come back on. They'd play in a quintet mode. There are also a couple of extra tracks on here that appeared on a Japanese on the Japanese release that they stuck on here just to round out the playing time on it. But like I said, it's bebop music for you know, from that time period. But real nice album if you like guitar music, jazz guitar music. And this is in the same way. It's another Kenny Burrell. I've only like barely listened to these maybe once through. There's a Scottish blues on here, which is the third track, which has an interesting intro, which kind of has a Scottish melody. And probably if you were from Scotland, you know, you might recognize that melody. I recognize the melody in my head, in my ears, but I couldn't tell you what the song is. But then they start out with that Scottish melody and then go into sort of a jazz mode again. And occasionally they'll bring back that Scottish melody, and it makes for an interesting song. But there's also a cover on here called "The Man I Love" by George Gershwin. And I believe this came out in the mid to late 50s, you know, or early 60s, something like that. And then I found this one for $1. This is Van Dyke Parks, Discover America. Van Dyke Parks used to make his own albums like this one. I was always really curious about what they were like. He also worked with Brian Wilson whenever the Beach Boys started getting away from their surf songs, their hot rod songs and everything. Brian Wilson kind of, you know, made friends with him. I think it was around the time that Heroes and Villains and Good Vibrations, that album, Smiley Smile. There was, back in the day, you know, they came out with Smiley Smile. I don't think it was received very well because it was just so odd sounding, although I really like that album. It's highly composed, and there's some neat songs on it, but then there's some oddball songs on it, like She's Going Bald. But at any rate, I think that might have been the riff that between Brian and oh golly, not so much his brothers, but the other singer in the Beach Boys, his cousin. I can't think of his name right now. But at any rate, this is sort of an unusual album. It kind of has it's kind of music from an era. But it's a very unusual album, and this is what he looked like back in the day. The top of this is broke, one of the hinges is off, but very eccentric songwriting, but at the same time pretty interesting too. Went by a well, it was my birthday, and so one of my treats was this here. It's a Stephen King companion. I saw a guy online, he was talking about this, and I like Stephen King too. almost like reading about him more so than some of his novels. But there he is riding, and this guy here in the lower part right there, that's his dad. PBS has a show about, you know, showing your roots or whatever. And on that show, the guy that does that program showed him a picture of what his father looks like. Supposedly his father left home when, you know, Stephen King was, I don't know, 2 years old or something like that. And Stephen King has always said that if he ever met his father, he'd punch him in the nose. But, you know, I can understand where he's coming from. But at any rate, he looks a lot like Stephen King to me. And this book is just kind of filled with Stephen King trivia and, you know, where he was at the time and excuse me, just different kind of things. And it's got artwork all the way through it. You know, it talks about, you know, the different movies he's that have been adapted to his stuff, and you know, it's got little artwork and trivia type stuff all through it relating to his stories. So, you know, I was happy to get this. It's been interesting so far. And then I went to a flea market charity shop here not too long ago, and I picked up some DVDs because they were just so cheap I couldn't not pick them up. This is the second season of the Rockford, or the third season of the Rockford Files that I picked up for $1. I think it's like a 5 or 6 DVD set. And I've always been kind of a Doctor Who fan. I prefer really the earlier Doctor Who than this newer Doctor Who. But I found these first seasons at that charity shop for $1 a piece, and it's complete seasons. And I haven't seen them all, so I thought, well, I'd pick them up too. And I found 3 seasons of it so far. These are the certain. Whenever it was brought back, this doctor here, I forget his name on the show, but it's Eccleston is the actor's name. Was the first one to play the Doctor when he came back, and then this is David Tennant, which plays the Doctor. The Doctor kind of, if he dies or something, then he reincarnates or whatever into a different Doctor. But he's the same Doctor inside, but his appearance changes. That's just the way that the BBC did the series to keep the series going. But when they had to get a new actor to play the part of the Doctor, then that's the way they did it, which was pretty ingenious on their part. But at any rate, that's everything I found here lately, and I thought I'd just share them with you, and hope everybody's doing well in the VC, and you know, been enjoying everybody's videos. Thought I'd get on here and show you what I found at the record fair, and hope everybody is enjoying the Indigo summer here in Texas. We still got quite a bit of it. I bet it really doesn't start getting cooler here in Texas until around October or something like that. Finally around Halloween, you know, our weather will change, you know, fairly cool. But so we still got some warm weather ahead of us. But be well, and we'll talk to you later.